All right, the one and only Robert Barnes is here to talk to us about what everybody is talking about right now. And that is that Twitter is suing Elon Musk to force him to complete the acquisition. It's like that relationship that, I don't know, it feels like we're watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard relationship play out in the tech sphere. You know, I don't want you. I want you. I don't want you. We just get abusive relationships and all that good stuff. So I guess I'll just read a little bit from CNN Business. This is their latest article. The lawsuit was filed in Delaware. Comes after Musk said in a letter to Twitter's top lawyer Friday that he wants to terminate the blockbuster $44 billion acquisition agreement. There's been a lot of talk about how he wants to know how many bot accounts there are, and they're not going to tell him. And I got to say, weeks ago, or maybe even months ago, when this all first started, I was listening to Peter Schiff, the financial guy, and he called BS on this whole deal and said it was never going to go through. He said it was because he thought it was going to be financial ruin for Elon Musk. And I've always kind of wondered if this was a show. So, Robert, why don't you take it away? Tell us what's going on here, and then am I just being a conspiracy theorist and calling this just a little bit questionable?
I mean, I think from the Musk perspective, it depends on what the language of the merger agreement is legally. So, legally speaking, if the merger agreement allows for an injunction, if the merger agreement allows for them to get specific performance, if the merger agreement waived due diligence, as some claims were made, then Musk is sort of up against it. And what Delaware courts have an option is they can either do specific performance, which they generally don't like to do. What they often do instead is award damages or impose the condition, the $1 billion price tag for exiting. One of those aspects that are in the agreement. So it really depends. Devil is in the details. My understanding is Musk's lawyer's positions is that he explicitly made as a precondition of closing that they provide full, complete, accurate information on one of the issues he was primarily concerned about for the valuation of Twitter, which is whether or not they have real human beings on it. And so how many real human beings are there? How many fake accounts are there? Whether you call them, bot accounts or accounts that are not really an actual user end consumer, someone who's going to buy the products Twitter is advertising, or that others are using Twitter to advertise for. The backstory of this is that there have been long-standing beliefs in aspects of the technological world that Twitter itself, along with Google and YouTube and Facebook's facing a massive class action on this precise issue, that effectively all the advertising dollars flowing into these places and a lot of their purported growth, which was boosting their stock value, is all built on a massive fraud. That, in fact, the number of fake accounts is much higher than what they have actually admitted to. That Twitter has suggested maybe it's 4 or 5%. That's the norm within the industry. But people who have studied the topic believe the number of actual fake accounts, in other words, be accounts that you like. So let's say you go on Twitter, you say, I want to reach 10,000 people. They translate that into, say, 9,500 accounts. Well, what if, in fact, and so you believe you're advertising to 10,000 people, or I'm sorry, like 11,000 accounts, through 11,000 accounts. Well, what if, in fact, half of those people aren't real? Half of those people are not end user consumers that will buy a product being advertised on Twitter. Well, then that dramatically and radically reduces the value of that advertising. You're overpaying by as much as double or triple. What happened in Facebook is Facebook knew that they were having small businesses advertise to people who didn't exist. And so that's why they face a massive class action. Why it's significant is it could bankrupt all the big tech companies if, in fact, they're built on a lie about bots.
Huh. Okay, so at the end of the day, it is kind of a financial. It's a financial decision. You're saying, like he would say, basically the value of your company is not what you say it is. Is that layman's terms for it?
Exactly. In other words, I'm buying this. I'm agreeing to buy this, but my premise for buying it is that your representations about low numbers of bots is true. And before I actually send you the check, you're going to give me my due diligence information on that. And so there was a lot of legal misanalysis that said, well, he did a final closing bid before he did traditional due diligence. None of that matters if within the merger agreement itself, it allows that to be a precondition of the closing agreement. So if that is in fact a precondition of the closing agreement, then Musk has the better argument here. Now, my own view is what's Musk up to? Three different interpretations. One is Musk sincerely wanted to buy Twitter, but wanted to make sure this wasn't a problem. Twitter played games, which means he knows it's a big problem, which means now he knows he overpaid and wants to renegotiate the price and leverage this to do so. Second interpretation is that Musk always knew or suspected there was a big bot problem, used the purchase agreement as a way to discover that. This was actually the popular meme that Musk himself retweeted on Twitter, is that Musk was going to use the litigation to get the information that they in fact were hiding. The third interpretation, and here's where I agree with Peter Schiff, but probably for some different reasons, is I from the get-go didn't think Musk would go through buying Twitter. I thought he was using the purchase of Twitter to effectively purchase new political allies because he's under massive something has happened behind the scenes, and I believe that Musk is under civil and criminal investigation already. It wasn't in response to Twitter, but he wanted to reframe the narrative. He wanted to reframe the narrative so that when the world found out he was under major civil and criminal government federal investigation, that it looked like it was retaliatory for him trying to speak out against Democrats and for free speech, because that's the new allies he needed. He's traditionally had most of his allies on the left. He needed allies on the right because it's the left that's coming after him for whatever reason. I suspect they wanted Musk to do something he didn't play ball with. And so he did this as a political ploy. My theory, hypothesis, was he did this as a political ploy. And as a political ploy, you don't go through with the burden and obligation of actually owning the business. So that was my suspicion. I don't, so far that my prediction is coming true if this all turns out the way it looks like. But I don't fully know. I mean, that was just a hypothesis because aspects of what Musk did look like he was sincerely interested in it. But I don't think Twitter's position is nearly as good as the media will make it appear to be.
CNN is quoting Twitter's complaint, having mounted a public spectacle to put Twitter in play and having proposed and then signed a seller-friendly merger agreement. Musk apparently believes that he, unlike every other party subject to Delaware contract law, is free to change his mind, trash the company, disrupt its operations, destroy stockholder value, and walk away. It does sound pretty bad. Do you think Twitter would let him off the hook if all those things hadn't happened? And this is really because they're just hurt. They've got hurt feelings over how all this went down.
Well, I think if the skeptics are right that Twitter's got a massive bot problem, that's a bankrupting kind of risk problem. They could be subject to massive securities fraud litigation because they've made public representations on the market that the bot issue is small. And whatever it is, they did not want to disclose the full scale of the bot issue to their new purchaser and owner. I mean, they opened the door to this, which suggests to me that the reason why they're so aggressive and assertive here is because Musk exposed their bot problem on a much bigger scale. And they have to, much as Musk had to get ahead of the narrative of any criminal or civil investigation happening on a major level by talking about purchasing Twitter, Twitter needs to get ahead of the media narrative about what's happening in the lawsuit, because they can't have, if they did not have a bot problem, they probably don't go through this suit, because then they really believe the value is much higher, like the Saudi royalty who has a portion of Twitter believed. Twitter recently dodged a suit. Another entity dodged a suit, but it was connected to Twitter, which was that Twitter was being used by parts of the Saudi government to track down dissidents, to torture, to kidnap and torture their family members. So, I mean, you have a lot of dirt. There's a lot more dirt in Twitter's world than there is in Elon Musk's world. So they got to get ahead of that now before everybody sees the other side.
We could go back to that in a second, but I think it makes me think of the Berenson settlement, Alex Berenson settlement. So we'll skip to that real fast, because part of what you're describing, if I'm interpreting it correctly too, is just the hypocrisy of Twitter, where they're kicking some people off and where they're allowing nefarious activity to remain. And I think probably you should do the justice to this, but when I read Alex's write-up about his settlement with Twitter, he seemed to make the claim that what he was really trying to get Twitter to do was enforce its community guidelines or terms of service consistently, that once you have terms of service, you can't just choose who gets to violate them and who doesn't. And maybe you're protected by Section 230 before you have that, but the second that you do have a term of service, and then all of a sudden you're arbitrarily enforcing them, that puts you under the microscope. That's what I read from him, but I might be completely misinterpreting it. He's saying he's not allowed to talk about the settlement, but he can talk about what it means. And so he says that, why did Berenson v. Twitter survive a motion to dismiss when judges have thrown out so many other similar lawsuits? Courts have generally agreed that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act and the terms of service that social media companies impose on users give them an absolute right to ban users, blah, blah, blah. Not so fast. The ruling offered a second explanation, too, that I had plausibly argued that Twitter had begun the process of modifying its terms of service when it set up its 5-strike COVID misinformation policy. So what's going on here?
So that second, that part where he says the court stated that plaintiff plausibly avers that Twitter's conduct here modified its contract.
Oh, right here. Yeah.
Yeah. Modified its contract with plaintiff and then breached that contract by failing to abide by its own five. I agree with him that was the most significant part of his ruling. Because, I mean, so Berenson sued Twitter. He decided to crowdfund, which is a risky thing to do. Especially, honestly, Berenson. But I'm not, in other words, there are people who can't afford lawyers, and there's some people who can. And, God bless Alex, but I'm not so sure he was in the former category. But he made the choice to do that. By doing that, he made a lot of public representations, including representations about I won't settle without discovery. Some statements that people at least interpreted to be that he wasn't going to settle without a public admission, without public confession, without public exposure, etc. Then he goes and settles without that. And he's been trying to spin that ever since. And he created his own problem by making at least leading people to believe that. And if he wasn't crowdsourcing, I'd be like, who cares? I mean, he can say whatever he wants to do for a suit. He's not obligated to anybody. It's his suit. He can settle it on his terms. But he did decide to crowdsource funding on it. And he did make representations that didn't quite turn out accurate, at least in the minds of many of the people who gave him money. And there's been a wide range of blowback against him because people were shocked by seeing this. So I'm sure the terms of the settlement require that he not disclose the terms of the settlement. That's pretty typical. Some settlements require you not even disclose that a settlement exists. So let's say if you see everybody out there sees a lawyer that has a case that says the case is resolved or whatever, and doesn't talk about the case at all, won't go into any detail about the case, won't even go into detail whether a settlement exists. That's a sign that there's a settlement that requires they not discuss the existence of the settlement. That's what that means 9 times out of 10. 1 time out of 10, it means something else. But so I have no doubt that they said, yeah, you can discuss the consequences, but not the terms. I think now he's partially right that this part of the court's order had value, that this suggested a way to sue Twitter even for a Section 230, because generally the court dismissed almost all of his claims. He believed he had novel claims. I get a kick out of a lot of these, even journalists in his case, who think they've reinvented the wheel. I brought every claim known to man against Twitter many years ago. The reality is the courts are mostly closed across the board. He seemed to think that it was a novel claim what he was bringing. It was not. God bless him. But what was novel was the court's interpretation that an aspect of there may be a claim that can survive Section 230 other than what was unique to Alex's case. Because what was unique to Berenson's case was the fact that he had a Twitter executive who made specific promises to him. And that's what distinguished it from every other. That's the main part of his case that survived.
I see.
Almost everything else got dismissed. And he spun it effectively. He's right that this part of the court's order could be interpreted to be separate from that. Not everyone did interpret it that way. But now the practical reality, most people anticipated that he would get limited discovery and then the case would be dismissed on an early summary judgment stage. And so his settlement made sense, especially knowing that Musk might not go through with the purchase. Then what he clearly really wanted was to be reinstated on Twitter. And I think his going through the process, he realized how tough it was, much tougher than he thought. He thought, if we can get a settlement that I'm at least back on Twitter, I can spin it in this direction, and an achievement. It's a very modest victory, is the way I would put it. But, God bless him, but it's a modest victory compared to what he was pitching.
Okay, so when he talks here about once Twitter or any social media company voluntarily sets and disseminates guidelines that it says it will follow in disciplining or banning users, it must follow those, even if its underlying terms of service explicitly say otherwise. So is that still part of it, or is he's trying to point us in that direction? It's not really.
He's trying. Yeah, he wants that statement by the court up above to mean that application
Okay,
of
and
it.
you're saying it doesn't.
Probably not. He's right. It gives the opening to it, that this can be cited in other arguments in other cases. I can tell you that this precise argument has been rejected in other courts in other cases. So he got a district court to open up the door a real little bit for select circumstances. The question will be whether other courts follow it or whether they limit it to the unique facts of Berenson's case. That how much was the court saying that in the context of he had a Twitter executive make a very specific promise to him versus this. Now, there are people who have argued this for quite some time. That, in fact, this was part of my argument all the way back. Because take, for example, here they're talking about specific guidelines and so forth. Well, I mean, promissory estoppel principles should apply to what Twitter promised from the time people set up their accounts. I brought suit on those grounds. I brought suit on the ground people who had relied upon Twitter. So a promissory estoppel, for those people out there may not know what the term means, it's somebody induces you, they make a promise to you, and they induce you in reliance on that promise to take action detrimental to yourself. And so that's what my view. When I brought suit against Twitter, one of my claims was Twitter promised to be the free speech wing of the free speech party. It promised to promote the widest range of voices and would only limit illegal speech. They got tons of people to monetize Twitter by joining it, providing free content on Twitter, providing free information, their own information, getting other people to join for the purposes of following and interacting with those individuals. So they helped monetize Twitter based on that promise. Then they reversed the promise. And to me, it didn't matter that if you used it afterwards, they had modified their terms of service. Somehow they got away with all of that illicit value they'd already got from people. Court didn't care. The courts were saying Section 230 blanket immunity. Section 230 was just applied for Snapchat, where Snapchat was facilitating a teacher molesting and abusing a younger student. So they've applied Section 230 so broadly. He's right that the judge allowed this little tiny thin space that one can argue means it, but his case doesn't have that as a precedent. It just doesn't, honestly.
Okay. Well, we all know what Robert has in his mug right now, and it's got to be AllisonWinePromo.com, even though it's early in the morning. But don't forget, everybody, you can support my work by going to AllisonWinePromo.com and get 50% off some amazing Malbecs from Argentina and 50% off shipping. We got a 90-point Malbec from almost 9,000 feet, a new one from 6,000, which is from hand-picked grapes, another one that uses natural fermentation. So go get the trio. Goes very well with, Viva said that when he was driving down to Florida, they ate a lot of beef jerky. So if you're fleeing from one or another country and you're eating a lot of beef jerky, it also pairs well. Probably not the best drink for the driver of the car, but maybe everyone else. Also, maybe not if you have kids. Probably not for the kids in the back seat, but maybe, somebody sitting in the passenger seat riding shotgun, totally over it. They would really appreciate AllisonWinePromo.com. So go check it out. Also, don't forget, you can go to TwinEngineCoffee.com. You get 10% off your first order. TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison. Go ahead, Robert.
He's got cigar coffee, right?
Yeah, I was actually going to tell you. That's why I wanted to make sure I got my coffee sponsor in, because since you're a cigar aficionado, yeah, the guy, he's an American. He started the company after spending years in Cuba writing about cigars. That was his specialty, and Cuba. And so then he moved his family to Nicaragua, and they run this small company. It's all organic coffee and high altitude, and lots of local jobs. It's a great company. I love working with them. But yeah, they also have a tea too. And let me make sure I have the right banner up here.
And they actually have a brand of
I like this, Robert. This is actually what I'm drinking right now.
Cigar number one, right?
Yeah. It's very good.
I'm going to have to get that. I'm going to have to see what that tastes like. Coffee can be very good with cigars if it's done right.
Well, let me know. Let me know if it's it's holds up to its label. I know that he's actually a big fan of you guys, of the Viva and Barnes duo.
Oh yeah, so maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll join in the efforts to promote it.
Oh, he would love that. I mean, if he's watching right now, he's probably falling out of his chair. He's gonna need a cigar to calm down. Anyway, so yeah, they do a tea too. This is tea made from the coffee fruit around the bean. Oh, I hear my producer starting to tell me that I need to move on to the next topic. Okay, so I want to bring this up because even though I actually, well, you know what? Let's go real fast back to the Elon Musk thing for a second. Then we'll talk about John Bolton. So this is how you're hearing it from a lot of the mainstream news. Like basically that Twitter is done playing nice. They're just the nice guys. They've been playing nice and they're just done with it. That Musk is just asking for useless data and he's jerking him around. He's not looking at all the other like positive stuff that he's been able to get. He's caving on key provisions. So maybe Twitter's just running out the clock, or Twitter is saying that Musk broke his first agreement. It's all pro Twitter. I don't know. Just I guess any thoughts on the reporting of this? And when you were talking about how you have these theories that like he did this to gain alliances, does this even continue helping that purpose, if that's in fact the case? Like he's trying to end up being sort of the persecuted of the mainstream media, or the persecuted of big tech, and this even still plays into the hand, even pulling out of the deal.
What's ironic is this is the same media that was enraged that Musk was buying Twitter, and now they're cheering on a lawsuit that wants to force him to buy Twitter. So that kind of tells you that what they're just driven by an agenda, not driven by any kind of consistency of desired outcome in this particular instance. And they're really assuming that Musk won't actually be able to buy Twitter by the way in which they're going about this. So they want him just to have to pay a price and embarrass him in the court of public opinion. Those that have been critics and skeptics of Musk, and I've been more on the fence. I have reasons I have skepticism about him. Some of his Neuralink ideas and going to Mars ideas, and he's clearly been caught promoting some things that didn't quite turn out the way they thought. But two things but he's where he's been underrated is his strategic marketing. In that capacity, there's not a lot of examples people can use to say it backfired on him. So just this past summer, just this past spring, it was anticipated that in the same Delaware Chancery Court, he was going to get hammered for a whole bunch of questionable transactions involving Twitter purchasing Solar City and these other related transactions. Almost everybody who observed it thought Musk was going to pay a $10 billion plus fine. The judge had him ruled in his favor across the board. Almost nobody anticipated that. Part of the why, though, is the judge's point was look at the value of Tesla. This is a company that is valued way past almost any normal independent metric for measuring a company. And he goes, that's due to Elon Musk. So why are you complaining about a guy that has added value throughout his entire business career from a marketing perspective? Yeah, I get the Hyperloop and a lot of things that he's promoted haven't come to fruition. And there are reasons to be skeptical of him. The fact that he got people to believe it for any period of time was impressive. I mean, it's fun watching Musk and Trump go at it because you have probably two of the greatest marketers using social media alive in the world today. So it'd be fun watching those two battle. So I think you're going to see all these media attacks that will spin it as Musk unreliable, Musk untrustworthy, Musk undependable, Musk bad, Musk makes bogus promises, Musk has 47 kids with 5 different women or whatever the number is. But you dig in, if the merger agreement said they should have turned over the bot information, then Musk is legal, and they didn't. Then Musk is legally in the right. Number one. Number two, it means Twitter's sitting on a massive scandal, and it'll only be a matter of time before it gets exposed. So all those betting against Musk in this lawsuit, I think, are probably on the wrong side of the odds.
What do you think that'll mean for other social media companies? I would assume that they're having similar issues as any of the other ones. So does that start a snowball effect, I guess, there?
Yeah, it's why Twitter has to do a blitzkrieg. Twitter needs a media blitzkrieg on why Musk is bad, because what would have happened if Twitter did not sue here? What would have been the attention? The attention would have been on the bot problem.
Right.
So Twitter couldn't afford that. I don't think Twitter even
Okay.
wants Musk to actually go through with the purchase. They want to make it look like this has nothing at all to do with the bot problem. Look over here. Don't look over there. Look over here. Look over at Musk. Look at Musk. Look at Musk. Please don't look at the fact that we're so scared of our bot problem, we wouldn't even let our would-be owner look at the scope of the problem. And what does that mean? If you dig in, it means all their advertising has been based on fraud, and it means much of their market public value has been based on fraud. It could mean the end of these companies, literally. It's all of big tech. And because there's allegations, Google has done it. There's through its YouTube app. There's allegations or its ownership of YouTube. There's allegations already. Like I said, Facebook is pending just one piece of it, not all of it, just one piece of it, where there was internal emails that Facebook knew they had a massive fake account problem. So, I mean, I experienced this directly, and my little sister had a restaurant here in Las Vegas for a period of time. Used Facebook particularly to advertise on it, market it. It never every other form of advertising, every other form of public coverage of her restaurant translated into good customers, but not Facebook. I spent a lot of money, or her restaurant spent a lot of money advertising on Facebook that just didn't translate hardly at all. And now I know why. Facebook was just lying. And in some of these cases, they were lying by ratios of 20x. Imagine saying, hey, you're going to reach 20,000 people with this ad, and we're charging you X rate. And it turns out that you reached 100 people, right? Or 1,000 people. That's not what you paid for. That means that's massive consumer fraud. And that's basically all of their revenue. And that's all of their revenue for the last 5 years. And then you look at the securities fraud aspect, that they have not disclosed this information on the market. You combine the two, what Musk is exposing about Twitter could in fact be the end of big tech monopoly power because they've engaged in mass scale fraud around the bot issue.
It could be that I'm just entirely ignorant of the issue, and maybe there are elected officials who have been talking about this, but the main complaint I hear coming out of Washington, D.C. is just like this misinformation problem. They just have a misinformation, and the consumer fraud part I just don't hear much about. Is there a reason for that? Because it would seem like if you really were concerned about the public and these companies having crony operating procedures behind the scenes, you would talk more about that and not just that they're rife with misinformation or stuff that's leading the public astray during pandemics or whatever else. Is that just because I don't know what's going on there, or am I missing it? Is somebody talking about that? I just don't hear them often.
No, it's on the Hill. The people on the right complain about censorship and then occasionally complain about pornography and other aspects. The people on the left complain about misinformation. Some people complain about privacy invasion and the way big tech has done severe damage to young girls, especially in my daughter's age group. I mean, that age group, as the documentaries detail, major psychological harm, Instagram especially, but others as well, and they knew it and continue to manipulate it anyway. But that's where the focus has been. Not maybe their entire business model is one big fat fraud. And it's an interesting question. I have heard this in the tech community for a couple of years now. There was somebody on our locals board that had detailed familiarity with it and went into it in detail. And so I've seen more. I think Musk. I think the people that are really in the know in the tech space, people like Musk, I think knew that these were big scams. And I think that he used the purchase of Twitter to expose it as an ancillary objective to, I think, his primary objective. But even if you don't think I'm right on the primary objective, I think an objective was to do precisely what he's doing, which is to say all these big tech companies that want to control the conversation and dictate perception of events are in fact built on market models that are fraudulent all the way across the board. It is a problem. I don't know where Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and the rest should get serious about that. I think they don't, for whatever reason, they don't know enough about tech, or they don't want to bankrupt these companies. There's a lot of institutional Republicans that get a lot of money from big tech. And maybe that's the whole time Trump was there the first 2 years, all these issues were present. They didn't pass a single bit of legislation. They would, grandstand, bring in a big committee hearing. It's the old Tony Coelho model, which is Tony Coelho's model was to threaten regulation to get a bunch of donations and then bury the regulation in the end, as long as he got the donations. It was a shakedown. At times, what the Republican Party seemed to be doing with big tech was just one big shakedown because they've not reformed it. But you're right. This is the big issue they should be highlighting, and they're missing the boat by not doing so.
Yeah, or like you're saying, I mean, maybe it's more purposeful and they know this is going on, but there are some other vested interest they have in not calling out. And so they'd rather focus on something else. Okay, Robert, this is well, actually, first I should say, Bob Whittlefish, I did M&A for Fortune 500 tech companies. I linked my analysis of the most recent SEC filing on Allison's Locals. In short, Twitter's behavior with respect to bots suggests shenanigans by Twitter. And just another reason to go to AllisonMorrow.locals.com, where you'll get exclusive content. You'll get posts from people who are way smarter than I am. And you get an editorial board meeting every week. Once a week on Saturday mornings, we do editorial board meetings where you can give me your feedback and guest ideas and all that good stuff. So go over to AllisonMorrow.locals.com. You can also go to VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. We're all over on Locals, so we hope to see you there. Okay, let me pull this up.
That's an interesting analysis. I'll probably grab that analysis.
I'll send you the link.
Because I'm a member of AllisonMorrow.locals.com.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I have a very esteemed community. Okay, so John Bolton was on CNN, and Jake Tapper. I hope I can play this on YouTube. I really do. I'm a little nervous that the mainstream news picked this up, so I'm hoping I can fly under their cover, but. They're talking about January 6th, and Jake Tapper says that you don't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup. And John Bolton goes, I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work. So, all right, Robert, let me know if you can't hear this. Let's listen for a minute.
Group of misfits with like Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell. Is he just not capable of hearing no?
Well, when it comes to his personal advantage, the answer is he doesn't listen to anybody else. But I think it's also important to understand, while nothing Donald Trump did after the election in connection with the lie about the election fraud, none of it is defensible. None of it is defensible. It's also a mistake, as some people have said, including on the committee, the commentators, that somehow this was a carefully planned coup d'etat aimed at the Constitution. That's not the way Donald Trump does things. It's rambling from one half-vast idea to another, one plan that falls through and another comes up. That's what he was doing. As I say, none of it defensible. But you have to understand the nature of what the problem of Donald Trump is. He's, to use a Star Wars metaphor, a disturbance in the force. And it's not an attack on our democracy. It's Donald Trump looking out for Donald Trump. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, and that's not what he did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another.
We'll watch more anytime. Yeah, please go ahead.
I mean, this is going to go into so many documentaries and other things. It's going to be one of those seminal moments. It's going to say when the U.S. government, powerful official that had been in and out of government tremendously throughout his entire career and tenure, publicly admitted on a mainstream liberal American news network that, in fact, America regularly, routinely engages in plans and conducts coup d'etats. Now, this has been known by anybody with an objectively honest view of American foreign policy, particularly since World War II. But, it's extraordinary to see it admitted. But this does reaffirm my hypothesis as to why. You can see he's got Bolton's always been a very arrogant guy. It's what all these guys have in common. Trump never should have had him in. It's a shame on Sean Hannity that Sean Hannity promoted him. It should tell everybody who Sean Hannity really is. Not a reliable, trustworthy voice. There's a reason why he likes to wear his little CIA pin frequently when he's broadcasting. But what happened is Tapper just insulted him, and he couldn't handle the insult, and that's why he blurted it out. No, it takes hard work to plan coups. You have to be really smart to do a coup. I'm John Bolton, and I've been doing them for decades.
Yeah, no, I think that's so spot on. I'll give Jake Tapper a little bit of credit that he didn't just stop there. He pushed a little bit. So let's hear how the rest of the interview in this section went.
Ultimately, he did unleash the rioters at the Capitol. As to that, there's no doubt. But not to overthrow the Constitution, to buy more time to throw the matter back to the states to try and redo the issue. And if you don't believe that, you're going to overreact. And I think that's a real risk for the committee, which has done a lot of good work, mostly when the witnesses testify, not when the members are opining. It is invariably the case that when you go too far trying to prove your case, you undermine it. And I think you got to give credit to the intelligence of the American people to listen to the witnesses and let them come to the conclusion. And I think the fellow who had actually gone into the Capitol, who said today that he had blinders on and he was too loyal to one person, that is the central point.
Yeah, no, it's something, and it was, as I think Laura Coates said, or somebody said earlier, an offering for a lot of.
I thought this clip had the place where he starts talking about Venezuela. Oh, well. Anyway, is it just me, or is it like what he's saying is, it's kind of like the mainstream media circus mirror type thing, where it's like, he's like, if we do it, it's okay. Like, we do it the right way. And really my issue here is that you're just a bumbling idiot and you just don't know how to do it right. I don't know. I mean,
there's aspects of that. I mean, CNN is as fake as that green screen is, pretending they're sitting in the middle of Congress. The whole media institutional dynamic of this sort of rules-based order, we're seeing it in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. There's a reason why almost nobody in the rest of the world outside of the West has joined the U.S. On the issue of Russia's Ukraine conflict. And it's because of decades and decades of brazen hypocrisy. Like here they're saying, oh, it's a terrible, horrible thing if for Trump to have challenged the election. Yet or to involve, have foreign involvement in an election, whatever the allegation of the day is. When we have done that ourselves routinely and repeatedly, and they celebrate it. I mean, like here, he doesn't say, oh, it's bad that we've overthrown democracies around the globe. We've done coup d'etats around the globe, because purportedly that's what is so offensive here, is that Trump was attacking democracy. And what they mean by democracy is their rule. That's what they really mean. They don't mean democracy. They don't mean the people's rule. They don't mean constitutional rule. That's all gibberish. They mean their rule. And that's revealed by the otherwise glaring hypocrisies and inconsistencies on their policies. I mean, Jake Tapper's been a political hack for forever, and he has deep ties to the intelligence community. He's basically should just rename himself Deep State spokesperson. And that was revealed by that he had no shock reaction there. I mean, remember like the CNN lady who got really mad because Clay Travis said the only two things he believed in was the First Amendment and boobs? And she was like, oh, my God, but look at this. Here's a guy saying, hey, I do coup d'etats all the time. And Jake Tapper's like, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, that's normal. I mean, that's a sad state of affairs in American institutions of power.
Well, I was going to show what NBC had for the rest of the conversation, because at least he said, so, all right, so pressed about the coups. He said he has planned. Bolton cited an unsuccessful attempt to remove Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, but declined to provide further details. Tapper said, I feel like there's other stuff you're not telling me. And Bolton says, I'm sure there is. I know. I mean, I guess my bar is really low to say I give him credit, but at least he followed up with some question. So, then they go on and talk about it. I don't know.
He didn't come up with it. You'd know this as a reporter. He didn't instinctively say that. So how much you want to bet somebody whispered in his ear, you need to follow up on that coup comment. And because Tapper was like, yeah, I get what you're saying. And someone probably whispered in his ear, hey, we got to look, we got to ask. Oh, yeah. Oh, what do you mean by that? No. And the guys like Tapper, little Dartmouth grads, they love to be near the intelligence apparatus. They love to hang out off the record at the bar in the cellar of the great Hay Adams Hotel in D.C. and be near the intelligence people. I mean, that's where Jean Le Carré's mocking of the intelligence community is so useful, because these people are John Boltons of the world. If you want to understand why is the whole West imploding in part, particularly Europe, where the euro's now at the same rate as the dollar. I wish that was the case every time I went to Europe. It was as high as $1.50, $1.60. Is because John Boltons of the world run American and Western foreign policy. And these guys are the most incompetent people on the planet. They're ego-driven, they're not intelligent, and they have no moral compass. They're Kissinger without the IQ. They're basically Kissinger's mentally damaged little brother. That's who John Bolton is. And we got to see a live demonstration of it.
I was shocked when I saw that, and I'm curious what he's thinking now. Is he just like, what did I say? I mean, a lot of the stuff that comes out of the mouths of these people, I'm sitting here shocked, but they're not, and so then I'm sitting there trying to understand why are they not shocked, and I can only come up with a couple options, which is like they just don't think what they're doing is bad. So they don't mind your knowing. I mean, they just, well, yeah, of course we have to have coup d'etats because we're saving the liberal world order. I mean, what else do you guys want us to do? That's what you elected us to do. I mean, we're saving you. We're saving you from yourselves. It's like, that's one option. They're showing you their cards because they feel like they're proud of them. They're not embarrassed like we are of it. And, or there's like some greater, more sinister plan in telling us that this is going on to distract from something else. I don't know, but I tend to think the former. They just are true believers in what they're doing and they just don't think there's anything wrong.
Especially with Bolton, that describes his whole career.
Yeah. Okay. They're called, this is going back to the comment about the Fortune 500 M&A. They're called milker balls used to milk companies for donations. They're not meant to go through. Does that make sense to you?
What's the context?
This was after this. I did M&A for Fortune for Twitter and Elon.
Oh, I got you. Yes. I see what he means. Yes.
What is a milker ball?
But I haven't heard it phrased that way. I'm assuming what he means is, let's see, to use to milk companies for donations. Or milker bills.
Oh, bills. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he can. If you're still in the chat,
I'd
Bob,
have to have more explanation. I thought I understood, but I'm not sure now that I look at it.
Okay. Maybe he can clarify. Well, another place where some questions came in for you, again, going to promote alisonmara.locals.com or Viva Barnes. law.locals.com. Let's go over there real fast. And we had a couple questions come in for you yesterday. This is where I posed ahead of time so people can ask questions for interviews. Twitter and Epstein didn't kill themselves.
That's one of the eternal truths. I guess we can add Twitter to it.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, pushing idea of, I think that's supposed to be separation of press and state, separation of any right and state. Lastly, how would Robert describe his longtime adherence to Jean-Jacques Rousseau's greater good? It seems like a trust the process and not nature mentality.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't consider myself to have adherence to Rousseau's greater good. I assume that's a reference to rule utilitarianism, and there's a value to that. But I don't think of myself as being within that the capacity he's describing. Now, I understand part of what probably the broader point is about why should you trust the process. I get a lot of reactions of, how can we continue to trust an election system that was broken in 2020? How can we trust a legal system that appears broken so often? I get that, but I think that it is still the best likely remedy is the political and legal process, more so than going outside that process. And so but I get where people get worn down and worn out by trusting a process that disappoints them so often.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the vaccine one in a second. Do you think the Berenson case will have an effect on current or future lawsuits with tech financial companies like PayPal or Square, or fundraising companies like GoFundMe for financial censorship?
Not at this point, unfortunately. I don't think. I get what he's saying. There's parts of that case you can quote that if you get the right judge, maybe you get lucky and you get into discovery. But it's honestly, he's reaching.
Okay, Mr. Barnes, is Viva going to hate the humid Florida heat more than the oven-like dry heat of Vegas?
Yeah, I think humidity gets to him much more than he's out here tonight. We're gonna grab dinner tonight, maybe do a locals exclusive of some type, and then he's up tomorrow for Freedom Fest with Ron Coleman and some others, discussing a range of topics. Freedom Fest is like a big libertarian inclined organization. They've been going on for couple of decades now. I think I've spoken at a couple of them in the past, but yeah, I'm sure that the humidity will be, he had been to South Florida before, so he had comfort with South Florida, familiarity with South Florida, but his whole focus wasn't weather, climate, politics. It was where are my three kids going to be able to have the most normal childhood, and that's what Canada stripped him of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what, like, now and then you see him start to get really enraged, and he'll try to talk himself out of it. It's all stuff related to his kids. Like people ask me why he moved. That's why. His kids are his whole priority. When we were in with Tim Pool, he was like, "Oh, I got to get back. I got to see my kids." You know, it's just that very much a family guy. And so I think they'll survive. Some people, you know, it is true the humidity, though it's not like Montreal doesn't have humidity. So, but the Florida, the combination, and he said that the sudden surprise showers that probably will be. I like the wind of South Florida, but yeah, the surprise showers, the humidity probably will be an acquired taste. But he'll probably like it come January compared to Canada.
I definitely want to get him on for a live report on the scene, Viva on the scene when there's a hurricane. Like I want him standing next to.
You know, he's got he's got many neuroses, and one of his neuroses is getting hit by lightning.
Yeah, he told me, well, and everybody should go check out. I had him on yesterday, and we did a whole hour on his move to Florida. So if you're interested in that, go check it out because he talks all about this stuff. But yeah, he did mention his fear of lightning, which is a valid fear in that area. It's funny because when I moved to Seattle, people thought lightning was so cool. They would like run outside and take videos of it and stuff. And I don't know, maybe that just ends up being survival of the fittest. But I'm like, what are these people doing? Why are they running outside to take video of lightning? I mean, I guess granted, it's not as dangerous, or at least you just don't hear about strikes as much out in the Seattle area. But in Florida, it's serious. I mean, you can get struck by lightning. I've interviewed people who, like, I remember one lady, she was just about to get into her car and there wasn't even a storm. It was like nowhere around. And all of a sudden just a lightning strike out of nowhere. And she got struck by lightning while holding onto her car door, got electrocuted and everything, survived. This is why I went from being a hypochondriac to just giving up, because I interviewed people like this where how could you even prevent that? I mean, there's no storm around. You're getting into your car and you get struck by lightning. I mean, I just finally said, I give up. I give up. I'm just going to live my life. And, you know, just whatever. I've interviewed people where bullets have fallen out of the sky, you know, go through their baseball cap, hit a necklace and bounce off. I mean, stuff like that where it should have gone in their chest. I mean, just crazy things. And then people who have died of stuff that you would never think in a million years. Life's weird like that. So we wish Viva all the best in Florida. I'm sure he's gonna be fine. Okay, based on the strength of the Twitter lawsuit against Musk, might it be wise to buy a few shares of Twitter, trading at $35 this morning versus the buyout price of $54?
Yeah, I mean, my instinct is that the suit is not strong, but I haven't read it in detail nor seen. Musk hasn't filed a reply yet. If the whole merger agreement is attached to the complaint, that's what I really want to take a look at, because the merger agreement will shape the prospects of that case. If Musk's people are right about what that merger agreement is in it, then the media is misrepresenting the value of Twitter. And if anything, yeah, you'd be better off shorting it. Then there's a whole group of lawyers that all they do is work with people who short or buy stocks based on pending litigation. So it's an interesting little subspace. Now, there's some securities plaintiffs lawyers that they've got caught up in occasional scandals related to that, but that's another story for another day. Which reminds me, I got to make that one of our Viva T-shirts. But that's that's another story for another day. But I would be more inclined. I mean, I wouldn't do anything until I read and reviewed it. But I myself would be more inclined to short it than buy it.
Too many people, like Barnes said last night, think because one person is great at one thing means that they are a jack of all trades, i.e. Berenson and BP. Who is that?
Jordan Peterson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's just that there's very few people that can be good at a range of things. Now, I think in Musk's case, Musk is what he is. I have never thought of him as a tech genius, never thought of him as a science genius. I thought of him as a marketing genius. I mean, if all you had to do is listen to his Hyperloop idea, and if you knew any of the technology or knew other people who did know the technology, you'd be like, this guy's not a science genius. But what he is a marketing genius. Now, this doesn't require much genius to know there's too many bots. All you have to have is the right inside information. And Musk is deep within the tech world. Also, something's clearly happening behind the scenes, because you're seeing Bezos attack Biden, other people. I think that the Biden administration wants everybody that's in the neoliberal corporate world to be subservient to them and whatever their agenda is. And you're seeing them not like it and rebel against it. Some of it may be because of economic reasons. Musk has taken a big hit. Bezos has taken a big hit. All of them got super rich during the pandemic lockdown politics. But Biden is gutting them. And Biden's foreign policy and domestic policy on energy is a complete disaster, in part for their business models. So that may be what's going on behind the scenes. But I think Musk is not a jack of all trades. Musk is just a great marketer.
I'm still wondering if Lynn could get Barnes out to the range. Do you shoot, Barnes? Do you want to go shoot with my husband sometime?
There's no way I shoot as well as him. So that's not going. I actually have only shot a couple of times in my life. So went out with a couple of buddies up on the mountains, and went out with Alex Jones in Texas, and that was fun. He made a little whole video of it. But like I'm not a great shot. I just like the machine guns that go.
Well, we did a live for 4th of July weekend with my husband shooting and helping our friends who didn't really have a whole lot of time with pistols. He's a bird hunter, but not really much experience with pistols. And of course, I've got my little selfie stick and my camera. I'm doing the live stream, and I like walk in front of the line to like put the camera to get the angle in front. And Lynn's like, that's the side of the gun that kills you. So you might want to back away. I'm like, that's all I care about, getting the shot. People, when we used to talk, I'd be like, I shot that, or I shot this. And he's like, wow, you shoot a lot. And he didn't know I was talking about video. I'm like you, I'm very little experience. Okay. Is there a chance that lawsuits about Twitter will disclose the backgrounds of people working there and how many of them are ex-feds or from nonprofits?
Probably not. The focus will be on this bot issue. Will be at least from where Musk, because it's limited by the merger agreement. This tends to be very escalated, accelerated trials. So you may have a trial as early as November. So it's unusual, like a typical corporate case. And usually that's because there's been an agreement for that in the merger agreement itself. It says, hey, if we have a falling out, here's how we're going to resolve it. And so that will limit the discovery to whatever subject matters are the focus of Musk or of Twitter. And to my knowledge, that's really just the bot issue.
Ari, the EPA ruling, could the carbon credit scam be undone? These rules have a significant impact on the price of electricity and gas, among other things.
If it's what's called a major question that Congress didn't explicitly delegate legislative authority to the EPA to do, then the answer would be yes. But I don't know enough about that particular policy to know whether it fits within that.
Is Barnes helping Kyle Rittenhouse sue everyone? Could Kyle sue Biden since he wasn't president at the time? I think Musk will win, but I don't use Twitter, so I hope it implodes and more people start using alternatives. Also, is Barnes on Truth Social?
So I do not currently represent Kyle. Wish him the best of luck. I think people have expectations of some of those suits that are more than what is. Once you're criminally accused, it is very, very difficult to win a libel lawsuit. I mean, it's a problem in my view, but it's just the reality of where it is, because basically, how do you prove somebody's statement was reckless when a grand jury found probable cause of a crime? The standard's basically very much analogous. So that's where, that's how prosecutors have way too much power. So I think it'll be tough for him. I'm not on Truth Social. I represent some people connected to Truth Social, so not yet on Truth. Maybe I'll get on down the road. Generally, I'm only really on Twitter for my internal curational purposes, and secondarily because of who follows me on Twitter. I'll put out certain statements because I have a lot of influential people who follow me to try to influence the course of public opinion in that world. But otherwise, other than what I do with Viva, the only place you can reliably and consistently find me is vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
Yeah, I took my banner away so they could see it. vivabarneslaw.locals.com. All right, final question from Locals. I hope you can answer this question on YouTube. If you can't, I'll cut the stream and we can just finish up on ROKFIN and the whole thing will be available elsewhere, but not on YouTube. That's just the drawback of being on YouTube. You once said a possible defense for a company that mandated vaccines was to claim ineffective counsel if their law firm was also representing a big pharma company like Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson. If the ineffective counsel defense is successful, what happens next? Is the law firm now liable for any harm from a vaccine mandate?
So in essence,
this, Barnes?
Yeah. So if somebody sues over any drug-related injury mandated upon them by their employer, the first question is, can they sue in that instance? It's unknown. I believe they can. I believe they should be able to, but it's unknown whether the courts will agree to that. But let's say that the courts do. Someone sues their employer, and then the employer, the person that would be held responsible initially would be the employer. And let's say the employer now owes a big judgment. And the employer says, well, we relied upon our counsel for bad advice. That employer would be the one then that has a right of a legal malpractice claim against their law firm. And my issue was that a lot of law firms were advising big employers and these law firms had conflicts of interest because they're also representing big drug companies. In cases, especially including in cases where the big drug companies were the maker of the drug at issue itself. And to me, they couldn't do that. I think all these big corporate law firms had to recuse themselves from any legal advice to any employer about a drug mandate when they represent the drug company that has the drug being mandated. And so I think that if any employer ultimately faces adverse consequences for mandating the drug or anything else related to it, maybe an invasion of privacy claim, maybe a HIPAA claim, whatever the claim might be, that is a product of bad advice, the employer would then have a cause of action against the law firm to recover whatever damages they had to pay the individual employee from for legal malpractice. Now, whether or not a legal malpractice claim is assignable to the individual, so the individual can say, I'll waive you, corporate employer, from paying me. I want to go after the law firm who is responsible for giving you bad advice. That depends on the state. Some states allow assignment of legal malpractice claims. Some states do not.
Okay, there was one question on ROKFIN that came in about best way to protect one's rights legally dealing with the feds.
Well, there's one general rule. It's not the Army, so you don't have to volunteer. And what I mean by that is, don't talk unless you have to. And if so, the number one interaction with the government is don't give them information you don't have to legally give them. Don't talk to them just because they knock on the door. Don't volunteer information that you don't have to provide, because it will almost always be used against you. And so remember a robust assertion of that right, because otherwise trouble tends to arise from it. People that are naive and idealistic and believe in the sincerity and the of government officials are the ones who most often get entrapped by that. So that's probably the best advice in general. The second thing is be self-educated on the law. Know as much about your rights as you can. And that gives you a lot of power, and a lot more power than you might think you have. And then probably third, in terms of figuring out what the government's up to, remember the Freedom of Information Act. We're discovering a lot of incriminatory information about what Pfizer did because of the Freedom of Information Act brought against the FDA concerning everything that went into the authorization of that and the releases of massive amounts of documents. Hillary Clinton's emails disclosed because of FOIA. Many of the most important revelatory information we received about bad acts by the government come through the Freedom of Information Act or its state analog, Sunshine Laws, Open Records Act laws. Same in the context of the 2020 election. So the more people educate themselves and empower themselves, because anybody can make those requests, that too can be a means of protection against government malfeasance.
Okay, I don't have anything else. Is there any final closing thoughts, Robert, that you'd like to share with anybody?
Oh, I just think watch the Musk Twitter case, because there might be another turn in the narrative, and it might be a turn that could be the beginning of the end of big tech monopoly economic power due to their fraudulent behavior.
Okay. Thanks for taking the time. It's always great to have you on. I know you're a busy guy. Enjoy dinner with Viva tonight. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And don't forget, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, AlisonMorrow.locals.com, and I will see you next time.